What if you could learn from physical product entrepreneurs that have risen up from the trenches to dominating their market by creating successful physical product brands? Well, this podcast is hosted by me, Cabell, and it's about breaking the mold to becoming a smarter, savvier, and better product entrepreneur. You discover how to take physical products from concept through launch and to scaling up from physical product entrepreneurs who've taken their revolutionary ideas to 1 million, 10 million, and 50 million plus in revenue businesses. You'll also join me on my journey to build $1 million physical product brand business in a year, where we both will learn about crowdfunding, selling to retail chains, launching through marketplaces like Amazon, strategic partnerships, publicity, celebrity endorsements, and selling direct to consumers. So if you're creating or building a brand in the consumer packaged goods space, in fashion and apparel, business products, or any physical product niche, listen in because we have you covered. Join the fast track to physical product business success. This is the Physical Product Business Podcast. I'm Cabell. Let's get rolling. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Physical Product Podcast, part of the 2X eCommerce podcast. And today we're going to be talking about authenticity, brand authenticity, and about launching from zero to a significant amount of sales that actually brings in traction. I will not talk too much. I have with me Scott Gabrielson, who is the founder of Cabell. They're a minimalist, high-end bag and accessories company that launched, less than 6 months ago, if you're listening to this. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Scott to the show. Hi, Scott.
Hey, it's nice to be here.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, could you take a minute or two to talk about Cabell and your journey thus far?
Yeah, so we here at Oliver Cabell, we are a direct-to-consumer brand, really focused on a few realms. One is transparency, the second is quality, and the third is really price. So the formation of the brand really came about due to the Rana Plaza collapse that happened in 2013. In our foray into understanding what happened in fast fashion. What we quickly realized is that this also was happening in the higher end goods of the market. So we specifically looked at accessories as a way to figure out how we can disrupt it, why the markups were as high as they were, and what approach we wanted to come through to building our brand. So for us, we do all production in Italy, cut out traditional middlemen, and then sell directly online internationally.
Okay, so you're a direct-to-consumer business. How would you describe kind of like your vertical integration? How vertically integrated is your company? What kind of control do you have with manufacturing all through to selling to consumers? And do you sort of sell, besides your website, do you sell in other channels?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's the line starting to get blurred a little bit in terms of what direct-to-consumer really is. A few brands sell at wholesale, but say that they're direct-to-consumer, which essentially juxtaposes the entire rationale for direct-to-consumer. So for us, we do all sourcing of our own materials in Italy. We purchase them and then bring them to our factory in Italy. So by doing so, we're able to cut out the traditional markup that happens when a factory does source materials for you. We also do all of our own design, all of our own sampling with our factories, as well as our production. So it's shipped directly from a factory in Italy to our fulfillment center here in the US. And by doing so, we essentially cut out almost all the traditional markups beyond taking the raw material and turn it into a material that can be used for production.
Okay, I'm on your website, and you've done something. You've revealed info hardly any retail. I don't even think I've seen it on any retail site, and that is you've revealed your cost of production on your website to your consumer. Why did you do it, and has it sort of derived any benefit? So I think you have here traditional retail, costs 12x, which is $1,320, and your equivalent is $240, and you break down the $240. Why take this route?
It's a great question. For us, a big part of our story was focused on quality. So, it's easy to talk through quality, but unless you actually reveal something, there's really no way that customer can believe you and be understand that you're being authentic and honest in what you're trying to say. So for us, we're a brand that essentially came out of nowhere, right? So for a customer to know that we are quality, we have to reveal something to them beyond just telling them that that's the case. Another big part of our story is based on transparency, right? We went into these factories in Asia and saw a lot of the brands that we loved that were being produced there in really subprime conditions and retailing for, the 12x that we reveal on our site. And the realization that we made was that the high-end fashion space specifically is incredibly opaque. Due to the fact that a lot of these brands are large public companies and have no incentive to really be authentic in that regard. They rely on their brand reputation and heritage and can change really how they produce their goods. And the problem is that, when you buy something of high price, you automatically assume it's of high quality. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's not the case. So for us, by being transparent in that regard, we could not only tell a full story in terms of what we were doing, but we also could build that relationship that essentially proved that what we were saying was true.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, and indeed, value is only what is perceived to be. And it's unfortunate what's happening in the high end of of the market, but that's just the way it is, really. Okay. One of the reasons so besides that, we had an earlier conversation, and you talked about your run rates. What kind of run rates are you doing now? Less than 6 months in from a sales perspective.
Yeah, so we're on a run rate to surpass $1 million in retail sales using the run rate that we're on. So, it's still early, but the response has luckily been enough.
That's good traction. So where have you sort of seen traction? I know we're going to talk about social media, your amazing PR you've managed to achieve, over a very, very short period of time to actually launch the brand. And so we're going to talk about that, but what can you attribute your initial traction to?
Yeah, so I think for us coming out of the gate, no one knew who we were. So we leveraged press to tell our story and really spread the word of all of Cabell. Secondly is the fact that we really wanted to rely on a high quality product and use customers as our medium to spread the word about the brand.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time focusing on design and quality in that regard. So the initial customers that learned about us through press became our biggest channel and biggest supporters of really, initiating the next set of sales for us. And that conversion luckily led into us growing our social media, and it's kind of been a circular route in that regard. Okay,
would you say press has been more important than social media over your this first period, this first phase of growth in the business?
I would, just due to the fact that there's a lot of brands that launch every day through social, and it can be really challenging to get your word out there, given the fact that a lot of these social platforms don't do a lot in terms of discovering brands. Mm-hmm. So if you have no presence really anywhere, it's hard for you to get discovered on social media. Yeah. We find social media is a better medium for other things than actually being discovered.
So social media really would amplify all of the other things you're doing, like the press or your design. Okay, so a few months ago, or about 6 months ago, I had the founders of Linja. I hope I pronounced it well. They are a Scandinavian heritage type brand, and they did quite well raising capital from Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and they happen to be crowdfunding experts now. Why didn't you take the route of crowdfunding for Liver Cable? Because it just you've got a limited number of SKUs, really good designs, great attention to detail, made in Italy, great story. perfect candidate for Kickstarter? Why didn't you go down the Kickstarter route or the crowdfunding route?
It's a really good question, and we really respect Linear and what they're doing, and they've been able to do an incredible job using that platform. For us, it just didn't innately feel like it was the right medium for a few reasons. One was the fact that we really wanted to build this into an authentic, long-lasting brand, and we've seen a few brands struggle from converting from Kickstarter into the e-commerce world without having another medium that helps sustain their growth. So, for instance, some brands, they do incredibly well on Kickstarter. The problem is that they often become Kickstarter recognized brands, and it's hard for people to recognize them beyond that initial medium. So for us, we had conversations with a few individuals a few brands that had done incredibly well on Kickstarter, as well as a few others who decided not to go that route. And through those conversations, we realized that, from a press perspective, as well as a customer perspective, we really wanted to be recognized as a fashion brand. And by doing so, it seemed best for us to go directly to the customer using our own site versus leveraging something like Kickstarter that does a great job in building companies and brands, but for us, wanting to be really taken seriously as a fashion brand was probably not the best medium for us to go through.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's rewind. At the start of just prior to launch, you probably had a number of options. You probably had social, you had press. What were your top, say, 5 options with regards to launching the brand that you sort of considered will drive, those initial, just drive brand awareness and sales? What were the options?
We really looked at 3 different tiers, and ones that were not going to be incredibly expensive or cost prohibitive for us to do. The first one was through email. So we built into our site essentially a referral program or referral mechanics that when people landed on our homepage, they would go through this introduction, which would essentially incentivize them to spread the word. They would get rewarded for referring other individuals. So that really helped us build our email list nicely before we actually launched.
How big is your email? How big is your email list? How big did it grow your email list?
So when we launched, we were at about 10,000 emails, and now we're at 30,000.
10,000 at launch. Wow. Okay. And how did you drive traffic to the website, and what were the conversions? Let's look at the conversion math there. So for you to have driven, so how did you start to drive traffic to the website?
Sure. So we, again, leveraged a few different mechanics. One was that we used our personal connections. So we reached out to individuals just to let them know what we were building, why we were building it, and if they could help us out by spreading the word. Secondly was that we relied on press, again, before we even launched, to tell them what we were doing and why we were doing it. And we were featured in a couple nice publications that garnered some great traffic to the site. And really the third thing was focused on social, in the sense that we wanted to build at least a small following on social before we launched. So when individuals came to our site and went to our social media, they understood that we were a real brand and not one that was going to fizzle out. In that sense, we feel that customers want to cheer for someone that they have confidence in, and we wanted to make sure that they had that confidence in us before we even launched. Gotcha.
Because I'm on your Instagram. You've got 20,000 followers and 21,000 followers on your Instagram, and it kind of reminded me of another brand, Herschel and Company, where it's all about a lifestyle. So they do maybe 3 or 4 lifestyle photos, and the next thing would be an image of the product. But it's more about the Herschel life, sharing the life of travel, as against selling products on social. It's just set out to inspire. So could you sort of break down your thoughts on on how you sort of developed your Instagram, and whether it's been instrumental at all to the growth you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a really good point and a really good question. And Herschel is a brand that we love and we're inspired by. For us being a direct consumer brand, we knew that we did not have a lot of opportunities to really tell the lifestyle of what we would want to portray ourselves as a brand. So we weren't going to have our own brick and mortar, at least at the beginning. So we didn't have that medium to do so. We weren't selling through retailers, so we couldn't leverage their reputation to do so. And our site is not incredibly robust in that sense. So we needed to lean on something else to help tell that story. And really tell the story of who we are as a brand and what our aesthetic stands for. So before we even launched our social media, we actually reached out to about 100 different influencers, individuals that were between 20,000 and 200,000 followers, and really told them what we were doing and why we were doing it. And spoke to them about how much we loved what they were doing and what their aesthetic was and what they stood for. Right. And in doing so, we also asked them if we could use their photos as we build our community. Hopefully, it would continue to drive traffic to them as well. But we wanted to lean on what they were building from a content standpoint and to help us. And it was great from the reaction standpoint. They are all, very happy that we reached out to them, asked them for approval. When we actually started selling product and launching, we now had 100 influencers that we had built relationships with that we could send product to and help, tell our story and promote our story. So by doing so, we were able to, again, leverage their network. They were hopefully able to leverage us as we've been continuing to grow. And by growing essentially at a nice rate from Instagram, we've been able to, build authenticity, build trust with the customer, as well as acquire new customers by people, recognizing and telling their friends about who we are and why they should follow.
It's a great strategy because it's taken the content curation standpoint without, abusing it, in the sense that it's pleasant in the eyes to see. It's your palettes are very light. I know it's intentional, white skies, blue skies, and you never sort of verge outside of that. And that just, so when you showcase a bag that's, black, it just stands out, in the frame. It is quite interesting. And yeah, so you're working with 100 influencers and rehashing some of what they're doing, but deliberately choosing the right sort of photographs that match what your what your brand is all about. So
no, definitely. And another thing that a lot of young brands, including us, struggle with at the beginning is just having appropriate and nicely curated content. And it's expensive, to be frank, to generate that all internally. So by us being able to lean on these individuals that we had already built a relationship with and, showcase what they were doing as well, we were able to get over that obstacle, which, everyone's essentially present with unless they've either have a photography background or have raised money to do so.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about so with regards to the email, 10,000 at launch, 30,000 now. How has it been utilized to actually gain traction for sales from a sales standpoint? Do you work with any sophisticated email autoresponder series, or do you just send out emails, basic emails? What's the deal with the email marketing, and how important is it to growing Oliver Cabell?
Yeah, it's a great question. We didn't know when we launched how important email would be, but we quickly realized that it's still, for us at least, is probably one of the best communication channels to interact with the customer. And the reason for that is when you're posting on social, you have a lot of other things going on, a lot of other it's one swipe away from being into a completely another brand's universe. With email, when they open that email and are going through that email, you have a larger medium to tell whatever story you're trying to get across. More clickable story because they're perhaps on desktop when they're reading it. And, versus something like Instagram where you're actually really not clicking into links or articles to get to websites. And, it allows us to continuously keep directly communicating with that individual. For them to delete it, it's a lot easier than for them to just unsubscribe from it. So by us continually having an interesting story for them, and another big part of it is we don't overspam. We send very few emails. So when they do hear from us, it's usually for a pretty good reason. So by doing so, we build trust in them. Their inbox is completely crowded. So we have to essentially earn our way into that inbox. And by doing so, and by doing it in a thoughtful manner, hopefully we continue to be, we continually interact, spark their interest, and continually be top of mind with them.
Gotcha. So what does it look like if I go on the website and I sign up to your email list? When do I expect to hear from you as a brand?
Yeah, so we essentially, and right away we have a opt-in message that gets sent out to your email. So this just confirms that you do want to be part of our storytelling and our newsletter. It also allows individuals to have a second chance to make sure that it's something that they want to be committed to. So once they do click through that, we know that they are interested in our story. We know that they do want to hear more from us. And then we slowly essentially have a drip campaign that welcomes them to the brand, why they should believe in what we're doing. And, any new products that we have coming about, there are opportunities for them to join wait lists, for them to be, the first individuals to get access to a new product. But, in that regard, we don't send an email every day. We don't actually even send an email every week. And it's just part of the reason that we want to be very thoughtful in how we communicate with them. And we want to be very deliberate in that regard. So we only send out when appropriate, and they'll only hear from us in that regard.
Gotcha. Okay, now let's talk to what I've been really looking forward to talking about, which is your PR traction. On the homepage, there's for a less than 6 month old company with no VC funding or angel funding per se. You've got Forbes, you're listed in Forbes, you've got GQ, Fast Company, WWD, INC, Yahoo, CBS News, and Cool Hunting. Really, really top rated, top tier 1 publications. Do you have a PR person?
We do not have a PR person, and we do not bring in a PR agency to help us.
Okay, so how did you do it?
So part of the formation of the brand was we knew that we needed to be able to tell a story. When we go out to press, they're not going to want to hear from us if we're just another fashion brand. So part of curating our brand was being able to tell this authentic and true story that had all the elements that make sense in a story. Have someone that is someone that is essentially abusing the customer in one regard, and someone that can come in and tell some facts that customers don't usually typically know. So but we spent a lot of time making sure that not only we built a brand that we believed in and we wanted to exist, but also that was different and interesting. And that, for press, that's something that when they're telling their story, they're essentially incentivized by clicks. By the amount of clicks that they get on an article is how essentially they're rewarded on their side. So we were very cognizant about that at the beginning, and made sure that when we told our story that it would generate that for them.
Okay.
Secondly was we built an email list of about 300 different contacts, 10 to 15 at every publication, and worked on building relationships with each one of those individuals.
How do you build a relationship with them without, before pitching your story eventually?
Yeah, so it was that's a great question. Part of it was 6 months before we even launched, I had reached out to each of those individuals and just told them a bit about what we were doing, but really wanted to garner how they think about storytelling, how they think about sourcing stories, if they had any tips, the individuals that I had reached out to were really, really well respected at those publications. I really did and still do cherish their opinions. And I think when anyone's approached in that regard, they're willing to help out, especially when it's a brand that's new and a company that, we didn't have any real strong generalizations when we went in or opinions, and we were really just listening to what they had to say. And I think
what was one of the most important things that stuck with you that gave you these results?
Yeah, so there's a publication out there. It's called Business of Fashion, and
BOF, BOF.
It's really well, BOF, and it's really well respected in the fashion space. And I spoke with one of the editors there, who's, I think, one of the best editors in the world right now. And she essentially spoke to hiring a PR firm, if it was worth it or not, how storytelling works with editors, how you want to approach editors. Those points were so important for us. And another big part of it was her importance that she placed on launch, making sure that you have credibility when you launch, because then you can still continue to build those relationships with press. But if you launch to nothing, it's a lot harder to do so. So by using the points that she said, we really spent all of our energy on building those relationships and making sure we weren't going to launch.
I have a question, actually, too. One's got to do with the focus of the pitch to the PR or the story. Whereas the focus of the story, the design of the bags, I think about GQ. GQ is all about, the aesthetics and looks versus the story, i.e. Robin Hood. The Robin Hood story, these guys are ripping you off. We're here to save you. And this is how transparent is. This is as transparent as it gets. These are the costs we're saving you. So how did they sort of present it? Because if they, was it one link into the other, or was it just one? Was it one-sided in that sense?
It's a brilliant intake, and I think a lot of people don't recognize is that press essentially is in two categories. One is on the business and more technology side, and the other one is on the product or the
consumer PR. Yeah.
So when we approached the fashion brands, or the fashion publications, we knew that they were probably more interested in the story about our products, the quality of our products, the design of our products, and having very high visuals and high quality photos. So that was when we had those initial conversations, those were the elements that we really played up. When we went to the publications like Business Insider and Fast Company, those were much more interested in the story of the brand, what was going on from an industry perspective, an overview perspective, and how we were essentially disrupting it and what our story was behind that.
So it was about you the founders, you the founder.
It actually was
and the story and the brand.
It was actually very little about us. It was more so about the evolution that has happened in the fashion industry over the last 20 years. I see.
Okay.
And those were the facts that we really played on. And we said, we're building this brand because of this evolution that has taken place. And we made it much more about that than about us. And I think those parts of it made for a more compelling industry-wide story that naturally put us at the forefront of the article.
Gotcha. And with regards to the business publications and business PR coverage, did that generate opportunities to Oliver Cabell, or was it more the consumer PR that generated that initial traction?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, from a traction standpoint, there is brand building, and then there's conversion, and then there's just having a large audience, right? So for us, the articles that led to conversion were traditionally not the ones you'd more so expect. However, it really depended on what the audience was. So for us, Fast Company was incredible in a lot of different ways. One was the fact that the audience that reads Fast Company resonated really well with the story that we were telling. They were traditionally more entrepreneurial and design.
Silicon Valley types, right?
Large urban settings, even beyond just Silicon Valley, but fairly well educated, had fairly decent disposable income, and these sort of elements play on where our price point is and kind of what our values are as the brand. But other publications, it's interesting. They lead to very little, but they might have a huge audience, so you get a lot of clicks out of them. So it's helpful in telling the story, but it may not be an initial push to doing that first inventory turn, if you will. Gotcha.
And I suppose my second question, which I forget now, I think I'll loop back to it later. So that was my second question. I wanted to ask you about the uptake on. No, I forget. Okay, we'll just move on. We'll move on. Okay, so with regards to so what does traffic, or where do sales come at the moment? How sustainable is PR? Because do you get the burst initially and then leverage on that to tap into other marketing channels, or is it a dip? Is it a regular drip in that sense? Is it still, can it keep the business afloat, or set new targets? Are you looking at new acquisition channels for Oliver Cabell beyond PR?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we essentially see it in 3 tiers. One is press.
Okay.
The other is word of mouth, and the third is repeat. So at the beginning, it's much more leaned on the press side. There is no really word of mouth to be spread, and there is no repeat customers because you haven't really sold it.
Yeah.
That slowly starts to translate as you grow and as you get older. So for us now, it's much more on word of mouth than it is press. And we're slowly starting to drip now into the repeat customer category. So through the evolution of the brand and the company, we see those changing with a bit of ebbs and flows as we have new product launches, as we have another story to tell that's interesting and authentic. But more so, the repeat and the word of mouth are the 2 peers and tiers that we really want to lean on. And those essentially reflect us as our product and as our brand. And that is why we spend so much time in making sure that we source factories that we really believed in, put out designs that we really believed in. Because, you can have a great press launch, but if your product's crap, you're slowly going to fizzle out.
Absolutely. You're so spot on, because they're both relatively cheap ways of acquiring customers. Word of mouth, your customers, or people know about the brand talking about you. Absolutely free, people just searching for the brand coming back to you. And repeat customers are existing customers who want to buy. So how expansive what's the current size of your SKU? How many SKUs do you have, and what are the expansion plans like in the next year or so?
So we currently have 6 SKUs. We'll be launching 3 more November 15th, and then we plan on essentially really ramping that up as we continue to grow. So we want to at least launch a new product every month for the next few months, and then a few products every month.
And these are high fashion items, so they're not really dependent on seasons, are they?
Yeah, so a big part of our story was on accessories. And accessories essentially are the biggest growth drivers for brands, especially large luxury brands, for a few reasons. But one is the fact that there is not a lot of seasonality to it. The items don't really change aesthetically on what's pleasing as seasons change or as years change. Which is great because we really design from more of a timeless aesthetic and minimalistic aesthetic in that regard. And the other nice part of it is that there's no sizing. So we had confidence in launching without being on Kickstarter, purely partly given that fact that we didn't have to create 8 bags in 8 different sizes like you would for shoes, for instance, which really takes the capital constraints down quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember the question. The question that looped back into what you talked about with regards to credibility. And when you mentioned the Business of Fashion, the BOF platform, so how do you build, being a non-insider, just parachuted into the industry more or less, and so being, obviously fashion is your passion. Looks like it sounds, you sound and you come across as someone who's really passionate about fashion and design. How do you get credibility from people who've been to fashion school? In that community, do you seek credibility from there, or do you just look at the market?
I don't think that we're really out to seek credibility from the fashion world per se. We really want to build credibility with the customer more than
Gotcha.
So what they're interested in from a design standpoint, or a story or a price standpoint, is more what we are concerned about and interested in than what the fashion schools might be perhaps talking about at that point. And a big part of us building that credibility was by focusing on our transparency. So telling the story behind our products and the pricing of our products. And even if a customer had no idea who we were, that transparency allowed us to build that honesty and credibility with them, even though they didn't know who we were and we weren't fashion designers that came out of some amazing school or some amazing brand.
I mean, at the end of the day, the luxury brands are charging so much, and you're here giving the full picture, and giving your full picture. So transparency really trumps. So yeah, I agree absolutely. Okay, right. So one final question for people listening. I really want to talk about fashion today, fashion, because I think the term e-commerce has been, sort of, it's, with Shopify and several other e-commerce platforms, around, it's been kind of like, it's been overused, the word, so I view people like you as, product entrepreneurs. Obviously in fashion, it's a lot more emotive in terms of the decision making of what you want to put on your back, or what you want to wear, or what you want to carry. So in 2016 and beyond, what are your thoughts on fashion e-commerce, on how to on just fashion products rather than fashion e-commerce? Because I think you're going to go beyond. Well, do you have any plans of going beyond fashion? Like, Herschel, for instance. Herschel is on ASOS.com. I was at the airport, the other time I saw Herschel bags, in the luggage store. So does Oliver Cabell actually have, any plans with regards to, actually distributing, Oliver Cabell, or would that sort of go against your pricing from a direct-to-consumer standpoint?
From a distribution standpoint, we would probably shut down the brand before we would go wholesale, because it goes completely against the entire proposition and the values of what the brand stands for. If we're going to talk about passing along value and cutting out traditional markups, we can't sell at wholesale. It just doesn't allow us to do so, which is great, because the traditional brands that do so, they essentially cannot propose products that have a lower price to quality ratio, if you will, than what we're doing. No one can really build and sell a higher quality product than we can at the price that we're selling at. And it's just purely because of the business model, the way we have it structured.
Gotcha.
In terms of, just talking on Shopify, there are a lot of e-commerce stores, if you will, that are popping about, because Shopify and other platforms make it really easily to do so, which is great, because it really cuts down the barriers to entry and the like, and allows traditional incumbents, like the ones that we're essentially calling out, if you will, to be taken down, in a sense that they don't have these barriers that customers or that individuals and entrepreneurs had before. But part of the struggle is that given the lack of investment that is needed, a lot of individuals or brands are coming about that aren't trying to build a long-term sustainable company or brand. And that's where our entire focus is on, is building something that's going to go into the future and continually introduce products that we love and that they love. With having brands and e-commerce shops pop up and down all the time, the noise can get so high just due to that low entrance. So, it's like everything has got its pros and its cons, but we think that transparency in general and breaking down those barriers in general will always be a force for good above evil.
Absolutely. So it's a great way to conclude that part of the show. And I like to ask guests just 3 questions in the lightning round, and then we'll wrap up the show. Okay, so I'm just going to ask 3 questions, and if you could answer them in a single sentence, would be brilliant. Are you ready? Okay, brilliant. What are your future plans?
Domestic growth.
Okay, fantastic. What are the 3 indispensable tools for use for managing your business?
Text Expander.
Okay.
Virtual assistants and Send Later.
And Send Later. Okay, fantastic. Okay, final question. If you were to choose a single book or resource that's made the highest impact on how you view building a business and growth, which would it be?
Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, okay. All right, I think I have it there. Okay, fantastic. Okay, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, Scott, on the show, and for you sharing, the story thus far of Oliver Cabell. And I just wish you the very best. You've done a terrific job so far, and wish you and your team continuous growth.
Thanks for having me.
All right, cheers. Thanks. Bye.